What is up, everybody? I'm really liking that song. But welcome to yet another live stream. My name's Lewis, also known as Mr. Camera Junkie. If you're new here, make sure that you make yourself be known here in the comments and have the Camera Junkie Crew salute you and say hi, say what's up. Don't be a lurker. We're all here to learn and have a lot of fun. As always, it's Saturday, and I don't know if it's just me, but it's sounding a little weird. Hopefully I'm coming in through clearly, so let me know if audio is good. But today we're going to be talking about the brief history of photography, and this was brought on because of a podcast that I was able to be a part of with Tom Buck and the Enthusiasm Project. And we did a recording just last Saturday, and we were reminiscing about my experience and how technology has moved so fast in the past 25 years. So with that being said, let me see who's here in chat. We got a full house. So we got Rich here and Nano. Lewis is here as well. What's up, man? Mark Sequence. What's up, bro? It's your first time here at the stream. Welcome to the Camera Junkie stream. Super fun to have you here. Okay, Anita Lee is also in the house. Welcome. How are you doing today? Anita is part of the Just Create More community. That's also part of Tom Buck and Heather Ramirez. Such a great community on the Mighty Networks, and it's just really cool what's happening over there as well. So if you're interested, you want to look up Heather Just Create, and you'll be able to find the huddle up and a lot more information about that. Or you can just go to Just Create More on the Mighty Networks, and you can look into more information about that. Okay, so Rich is saying hello. Okay, Melanie is here as well. And speaking of Tom Buck, there he is. How are you doing, sir? You probably just heard we were just talking about this on Saturday, so that's what brought this on. And the other thing is that I've also noticed that even though people talk about the technology, there's still a lot of people who really don't understand or comprehend the differences between an SLR, a DSLR, and a mirrorless camera. Mostly between a DSLR and a mirrorless camera, where they really lose touch, but we're going to go over that briefly to see if we can get you a better understanding of how these cameras work and what the differences are. Okay, so yeah, we have a full house here. We got Harry is also here saying hello to everyone. Nano saying I'm coming in fine. Okay, that's good. Gary Jones saying hello to everyone. Okay, well, with that being said, we're going to take a brief history of, we're going to rewind it a little bit, so this is just a bit, and we're going to take it back to just basically late 90s. That's where I kind of left the photography, videography world, leaving school, and just around the turn of the century was when things started changing. Okay, let me start putting my phones on mute so we can get through this. Okay, and where I left photography, it was SLR transitioning into what is called DSLR. Now, SLR stands for single lens reflex. That's what the abbreviation of those three letters are. Give me 1 second. This has been such a crazy busy week, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. For example, what I have here is my Zenit. This is a Russian 1960s SLR camera. It's in excellent condition. I absolutely love this. I got an excellent deal for this camera. I paid $60, and I really wanted it for the lens, because the lens that came with it is the highly requested or acquired Helios 44 M4, which is a 58mm f2, also known as one of the bokeh kings. It's got a very pronounced swirly bokeh in the photos. and I've been on a kick for vintage lenses. So with that being said, I was able to pick this up for $60, and it came with a very nice camera. Now, I'm gonna take the lens off real quick to give you a better visual of what's going on. Now, this camera, the lenses actually screw off because of the vintage style. That is called the M42 mount. It's basically 42 millimeters on the screw thread, and that will now show you the inside of this camera. Now, what you have in there is a mirror. That mirror is angled at a 45-degree angle. So if we were to be looking at the camera sideways, that mirror is sitting inside of the camera at a 45-degree angle, like so. So what that allows is to the lens to capture the image, shoot the light through, and hit that mirror and start shooting it up. Directly when it gets shot up into a prism, that allows you to see it through the viewfinder, which is that little square in the back there. So if I'm gonna cover my hand, we will see like the light shading off and on, because it's basically reflecting the light. There we go. That's a good illustration of it. So now, what I also want to show you is how it works on the inside. It's really cool to have a vintage film camera because it's not all electronics like I will demonstrate with the other types of cameras. Okay. So what it is that film is sensitive to light. So you will load a film cartridge in the back here, and temporarily, as you were to, let's try to keep it open. Okay. You would wind it up, and once it's wound, it's all ready to go. Basically, this is called a cloth shutter that's just gonna run a single cloth across the back. So once I hit the shutter, it will open briefly, and at that brief moment, what it does, it actually lifts the mirror compartment up, blocking the prism that you're seeing through, and in that brief moment, it will open the shutter, allowing the lens to shoot the light directly through this entire system and hit the film that's sitting right on the back. Now I'm gonna do that again to show you, because I have it on bulb, and for those of you who know photography, bulb will allow the shutter to stay open as long as I hold the button down. So that's what I'm gonna do now, and as you can see me right through that hole right there, because that is a complete, excuse me. Ooh, it's already getting that way. All right, so basically what it is that it's a complete hole that allows all the light. So if I were to put the lens in front of it, you will basically get an illustration of how that works. Now you're starting to see me upside down, and that's how optics work, but we can get into that on another day. As soon as I release it, it then closes the shutter, releasing the mirror down, allowing you to see through the viewfinder once again, allowing you to be ready for the next shot. That is the basic gist of a SLR camera or a film photography camera. Once again, SLR standing for single lens reflex, because you have one lens, the mirror, that's sitting there, and it will reflex and move so that you can take a shot, a photograph every single time. So basically, SLR stands for the mechanics of the way this camera would work on the inside. With that being said, that comes to the confusion of SLR versus DSLR. Now, DSLR is exactly the same exact concept, except the D stands for digital. So now you've replaced the film that you would have to go manually one by one, replacing the cartridges and dealing with film cartridges. Let me bring one out that looks similar to this, because this is exactly what a film cartridge would look like for that type of camera. And what we have done is basically replaced all of the film that you would ever carry with a digital photography or film camera behind that same structure that you would find in the SLR. So if you were to remove film completely and just add a digital back to the back side of that camera, is basically the birth of an SLR. So now I'm going to take the lens off of this. Excuse me, let me correct myself. The birth of the DSLR. So when I show you there, you have the same exact mechanics. You have a mirror on the inside, and that mirror is going to reflect all the light through the prism at a 45-degree angle, just like the single lens reflex. The difference is that there is no like complete hole pass through. Once the shutter opens, what you will see instead of film is you will see your digital sensor, and that sensor is what's going to be recording the image and then processing it into the camera, shooting it over to your memory card, so on and so forth. So DSLR is an SLR completely digitized. Now, the last thing, so that we can tell the biggest difference between a DSLR and a mirrorless camera is basically the thing that I mentioned on these two cameras prior, which is the mirror that's sitting at a 45-degree angle. Now, this is my Fuji X-T1. This is a mirrorless camera. And when I remove the lens, you will see that you will have a direct access to the sensor that I was just mentioning before on the Nikon camera, because that one you don't see it because there's a mirror in front of it. This sensor basically is the same thing that would replace the film on the SLR camera and the DSLR, removing the mirror from in front of it. So you would now maybe ask yourself, why would the technology move from an SLR to digital SLR to now mirrorless? And it's very interesting, but it has to do with the size. Now, single lens reflex camera, as you can see, has a very small profile. And out of these three cameras, this digital one is actually the chunkiest boy of the bunch, because it's both of like the old and the new. So now, if we were to try to just remove some of the bulk, which is the space that's actually there of the mechanics that exist in the two older generation types of cameras, is where we come to the mirrorless. And when we have the mirrorless here, what, like I said, you don't have that extra mechanical feature that could fail. So that's one of the major advantages, and it gives you the other advantage that this one quite most likely resembles the older Zenit from the 60s, because the form factor that you're able to carry in this small package is quite different. This is the smallest camera of the bunch, but it also gives you all the functionality of the DSLR and the capabilities of all. So another advantage to mirrorless cameras is that the flange distance, or the distance between the lens itself or the mount and the sensor itself, has been dramatically reduced. That is what allows these cameras to be smaller, but what it also allows is for adapters to come into play. The difference between this and these has to do with the size and the distance of the lens that you're using in front of it to actually hitting that sensor. With the shorter flange distance on mirrorless cameras, what it allows you to do is use something like this. This is my Photosay adapter. It's basically a dummy adapter. It just converts my Fujifilm camera into a SLR. So it allows me to use every single lens that I have for my vintage cameras on the newest digital camera, the mirrorless. And because it, each manufacturer would have a different flange distance between their mount and the actual film, and that was the biggest determining factor between camera and camera brands. With the mirrorless system, it allows you to mimic whichever camera brand you desire. So this is one for an M42 mount, so it basically replaces my Zenit camera. But for example, I also have an adapter here that converts my Sony cameras to Canon. So with this simple adapter, I have access to using all of Canon's glass, or lenses, which when it comes to photography, lenses are way more important than the camera body. I always have a saying, glass before ass, because of that reason. Optics will always keep their value because they are the most essential part to your photography or video. So if you're really hard up on like, oh, my favorite lens is this Canon lens and I will never be able to use it because it's a vintage lens and it's manual, but it fits my cameras, this little adapter here will give you the ability to move into the new technology and still use the glass of old. And that's actually why I got my hands on a Fuji camera. I've never really been big on Fuji, and it's nothing that I have against it. It's that I usually pick up my cameras on the used market, and Fuji owners tend to keep their cameras. They're very passionate about their gear, and even if they were to buy a replacement camera, they usually hold on to them. So you don't see a lot of Fuji cameras on the used market. But Fuji is majorly known for their film emulations, which tries to mimic what we used to get from the different brands of these types of film cartridges. So with that being said, it was my idea that I got into vintage lenses for photography, that it was just like a match made in heaven to actually use vintage glass on film emulations with the Fuji system. And I like the results. I really do myself. It's not anything that I do for like professional work. When it comes to photography gigs, I use my Sony cameras, and I've mentioned that before because of the autofocus. It makes my job more convenient. But when it comes to my personal photography and what I like to shoot, right now I've been really hooked onto this XT1 because of the same explanation. Like, it gives me the vintage feel of an SLR camera with all the advantages of a DSLR and more. So yeah, this camera ends up being whichever type of camera brand that I desire it to be, just because of the ability that you have to adapt the myriad of lenses to a system like this. So on top of that, I've really been liking using manual lenses to give me like complete control and taking away the autofocus feature that I rely on so much when I use my Sony cameras. So those are the biggest reasons why I really enjoy using these types of cameras for my own personal photography. But hopefully that gave you a brief, glimpse on the differences and the key features of the different types of cameras that there are, going from the vintage SLR to the DSLR and now mirrorless, and the advantages to each. So let me check on the comments now that I've said my piece. See if you guys have any questions. Where's my mouse? Oh, there we go. All right, so let me see where I link this. Okay, Nano says he was ready to take notes. So is Melanie. Mr. iPhone Junkie. That was my day today, Rich. I fixed 2 iPhones and an iPad, and just running around South Florida. Okay, so we're saying hi to everyone. Says, I got a sound effect. Woohoo, first time in chat here is gonna be fun. Thanks, Mr. C Junk. Sound effects are a bit loud, Lewis. You're low compared to it, I mean. Okay, thanks for that. So sound effects always tend to come in louder, but let's do that. Okay. Because this was a steal, I wouldn't hesitate to get it. I'm not sure exactly what you were talking about, Nano, or what I was talking about. But we were probably talking about the Zenit. Talking about these cameras, just to give you a little bit more information, the Zenit I picked up for $60. That was a steal of a deal. I grabbed the lens that I have here on this Nikon, which is my 35mm f1.8. Let me see, focus. Okay, so this lens right here is probably my favorite lens for the Nikon APS-C system. And I saw a really good deal that I picked it up for $40. It was like hella no-brainer. And then I just had the lens there and I was adapting it, but not really using it to its full potential. And then I so happened to see this camera, the 5100, come up on the used market, and I picked that one up for $100. So in total, $140 for this kit here. And wow, is it worth it? Like, if you're looking into getting into photography and don't want to blow, like your whole budget on it, I highly recommend looking into the used market. This can teach you everything that you would ever want to know about photography, and it will still hold up till today. I was really surprised because it has its limitations. 20 minutes record limit, and it only shoots or records in high definition 1080. But I was still surprised that it has face tracking on such an older DSLR camera, and that it was, it was workable. It was something that wasn't the best, but could you use it? Absolutely. And if you really wanted to get to the nitty gritty, you would just also put it in manual when it comes to focusing, so that you wouldn't have to hear any of the motors if you were using the on-body microphone, which I don't recommend. And then the Fuji was one that I really wanted to pick up, and when I saw this one available, it was the body only, just like this, and they were asking $300 for it. I was able to get it for $200, and then I was able to pick up the kit lens that comes with it for another $50 off of OfferUp, and that one I bought via mail. I got that one from California, and they shipped it out to me. It was a really good deal. So $250, and I got this Fuji lens. I spent like some extra money on like the lens adapters, but it allowed me to use a bunch of vintage lenses that I have. Like one of my favorite vintage lenses, and I keep talking about this, which is this Fujinon 50mm f1.4. I have a video on my channel here where I did a lens review on it was on that one, and I compared it to my Zeiss 55mm f1.2, which is this shot over here, and that one, actually, let's see if we can, that's that one. Basically one of my favorite, my favorite lens to shoot photography with the Sony system. This is the Zeiss 55 f1.8. That thing is an amazing lens. And like I said before, lenses is gonna make the biggest difference between your image more than the camera body itself. So if you get a good lens with an older camera body, you can still make magic. Absolutely. This says, yeah, that's a steal. I wouldn't hesitate. He goes, my last film SLR was a Nikon F100 in the 2000s or about. Yeah, because that was like when I was leaving school, and that's when things were really starting to change. And that's when I left like photography. I started shooting Pentax K1000 SLR in 1982 in high school. Okay, so Rich has a question. It says, what does full frame mean? Well, full frame, that's a really good question for those who don't know. Full frame is a representation of what we get with this camera here. Oh, we switched it over, but this camera here. So this is a standard SLR single lens reflex film camera. I'm gonna open up the back again to show you that little square there, right? That's the hole that's allotted to fit precisely onto the film. And when you were to take a photograph, that is what opens up, and it will completely fill the slot in your film cartridge. And once it's taken, you've taken that exposure, you move on to the next one. The size that you're seeing here, the size of that space in that hole right there is 36 millimeters across, and I believe 24 millimeters up and down. That is what is considered full frame, because it is what we represent or fall back to as a film image in a 35 millimeter film era. When the digital cameras came out, right, the sensor, well, actually, let me show you off the mirrorless one. The sensor that's here, oh, let's move it. Yeah, the sensor that's there, right? That little sensor, that little square shaded part, that's what actually receives the light and represents the piece of film. That sensor there is much smaller, basically half the size of the full frame or the size given. That's actually, I think it's 16 millimeters up and down and 24 millimeters across. It's called the Super 35 because it's the standard size that was used for film photography or filmmaking in that era when we were still using film. You know, we still use the terms like footage, and that really came about the amount of feet that you had in film to record a movie. So the difference between full frame, APS-C, and everything like that has to do with the size of the sensor and how we determine the size that your camera is actually carrying towards the equivalent of a standard 35 millimeter film camera. Now, a full frame digital camera, whether it's a DSLR or a mirrorless, that sensor is going to be to the same exact size or specifications as the hole that's allotted in that film camera. So a full frame DSLR or mirrorless camera is going to have a 34 by 26 millimeter lens and or sensor to get the same amount of light captured on that sensor as you would on a piece of film 35 millimeter. The APS-C cameras are smaller versions of that, and because you reduce the amount of sensor size, you will be getting a degraded image comparative to full frame photography, whether it's film or digital. And that's the difference between full frame, APS-C, micro four thirds, or any other variant of smaller sensor size, whether it's called the 1 inch or anything like that. It's all being based around the standard that we call full frame is the size that we would get from a 35 millimeter film emulation. This guy right here. Once again. All right, Kippy's in the house saying hey to me and to everyone, saying XT1 there. How long have I had it? I've had the XT1. I bought it towards the end of last year. So I've had it for like, I would say now like 6 months. I haven't used it as much as I would want to, but I use it for my personal stuff. Like I have a bunch of pictures of Aiden using that camera, like just all the time. Brian's in the house. And Kali is here. How you doing, Kali? Welcome. Hopefully we were able to help you with your set. Today we were in class. We were doing Kali's lights in her yoga studio. If you're interested in learning yoga, definitely check out her channel. She's awesome. And I think we got things dialed in pretty good today so that she has a look that she wants. Look, Tom Buck said it so much easier than me. Look at that. Just says Rich, full frame means the camera sensor is the same size as a 35 millimeter film. Yep. And he says thanks. See, that was so much easier, but it gave me something to talk about. So Kippy's saying hi to Harry. Professor Ness is in the house saying what's up to the good people. I'm doing good, sir. Thank you for stopping by. Mark saying it's a party now that Nez is here. So, woo, got a break from the wife and kids. She's asleep. I'm here. What's good, folks? And Lewis says the combos. What's up, KP? How you doing, sir? Says it sure is. Hope to see you there tomorrow. Absolutely. Yeah, Mark, check it out, because Professor Nez has his live stream every Sunday, which is 9:30 Pacific time, 12:30 Eastern, and you'll always find me there. I'm not even gonna repeat that, but that's funny. All right, so everyone's saying hi to Professor Nez. But yeah, if you guys have any questions besides that, because going back to the way Tom said it, which is a better way to start that conversation, is yeah, full frame is the same size as a 35 millimeter film. Back in the day, we had a variety of different film sizes: 8 millimeter, 10 millimeter, 12, 16. There was a variety of different millimeter sizes for different camera types. Even Polaroids, you know, that's a whole different type of film. And the real difference between that and what we're dealing with right now is the fact that instead of actually carrying different types of film, we just have the different sensor sizes. So just to give you a little bit more information, a full frame camera is going to give you the same millimeter equivalent as a film camera. So if a full frame mirrorless or digital camera is using a 50 millimeter lens, then that 50 millimeter lens is going to give you a 50 millimeter equivalent representation to what you would get with the film camera. Now, if you're dealing with an APS-C camera, the sensor is a little bit smaller and it's called a crop factor. So a 16 millimeter lens will not act like a 16 millimeter lens on an APS-C, and a 50 millimeter lens will not act like a 50 millimeter lens on APS-C, equivalent to what you would see on film, because of what's called the crop factor. It's almost like it's zoomed in a little bit because you're removing some of the edges of the actual photograph. So an APS-C camera with lens at 16 millimeters would basically act like a 24 millimeter on a full frame camera or a full frame lens equivalent. A 50 millimeter lens on an APS-C will act like a 75 millimeter, and that's where we actually get the terms full frame APS-C. It's basically just trying to give you a better illustration of what type of crop factor you're going to be dealing with in the hardware that you're purchasing, because prior to digital cameras and having different sensor sizes, it really was all the same. Every camera was what we would consider a full frame, because you were always using 35 millimeter film. And if you weren't, then you were using a completely different type of camera with the different types of film. Like I mentioned before, a Polaroid, you will never use the 35 millimeter film on a Polaroid. So it's kind of falling into that same category of saying, like, traditionally you wouldn't use the same type of lenses on that camera that you would for a full frame, but when it comes to digital, it's so diverse that you can. And because of that, we have to designate the different sensor sizes so that you have an understanding of what type of image you're going to get out of it at the end of the day. It does tend to become a lot more confusing when you get past full frame, and like Tom said, that it just represents the same image that you would get from a 35 millimeter film. But it really has to do with all of the crop factors that you would get from the other types of sensors that makes things a lot more confusing. Raphael Ludwig is here. What's up, man? Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you. Says your live stream is always interesting. Coming here, that gives you a whole different perspective on cameras. Well, yeah, because you see, now that I broke down the fact that, like the physical differences and nuances between the cameras. The reason why I even bring this up is, like I mentioned before, I just had a conversation with Tom Buck on his podcast. It was so much fun, but it really brought me back to how I left, prior to me rekindling my passion for photography and video within like the last 5 years. I was in school for this. I went to school for television production, filmmaking. I was really into journalistic photography, things like that. And I left it when we were dealing with this. I had to have a camera. There was a limited amount of exposure. So I remember having a camera and I would put film in it. And this is me being young, but I remember having a camera, putting film in it, having 36 exposures, and I would value those exposures. Like, I would go to an event with my camera and I would take 2 or 3 pictures, and it wasn't like I would just stop, like I would just use up the rest of my exposure so that I can see the 3 or 4 pictures that I took of that party. No, I would just wait, and then my camera would sit on a shelf until I found another event or something that I wanted to use exposures for. And when I would do that, I wouldn't go click happy and just start shooting everything. So by the time that I would actually end up developing my film from my camera, I would have like 4 or maybe 5 events that I had stored in memories there. And then to develop that film and get it back and see, like, oh my God, it was like, I would say 6 months to a year every time I would develop a roll of film, because there wasn't that many things that I would be constantly taking photographs of at that time. And I was being very frugal with my exposures. So to go from something like that, to go to a mentality where I would look at something and I would be like, is that worth my click? Is that worth me putting this up and doing one of these and that mentality is how I grew up with when it came to photography, composing your shots and always thinking twice before you hit that click. And now come that I left photography in that manner. So, like, to give you the example, this is the way I left photography. And then I fall into the workforce and I start working, life gets in the way, your passion goes to the back burner, and you're just, you're living your life. And now the technology, which it's funny because I was in the technology space. I'm doing, computer servers, networks. And it really didn't, click back into what was happening It really didn't click what was happening in the technological space, in the photography side. So it was just completely oblivious to me. And it just turned around that it was, my son being born, wanting to take better pictures of my son. But then with his condition, me changing my life to better cater to his needs. And then me trying to show better video, try to take better photography of what I was doing with my iPhone repair business, that rekindled my passion for photography, because I wanted to take better photos and better video than what I was able to capture with my iPhone. And I guess coming from that background, I knew that there was better than the iPhone, especially 5 years ago. Today's iPhone cameras are a lot better, but still, even back then, we were dealing with an iPhone 6, 6S. I wasn't able to get the images that I wanted to represent what I was doing with the iPhone repairs with the iPhone camera itself. So that led me into using my point and shoot camera again. And then once I fell back into that is when, it all snowballed from there. It was funny that I actually broke that camera. That led me into the market for buying a new camera. And that's when it really snowballed. Like, I started researching the past 20 years of digital technology, in the photography space, and I was completely taken back, completely hooked at not only what we can do with cameras, but how accessible they are. Because I'm coming back from the time where I had 36 exposures and I had to just I was very picky, very frugal with my images, to now I can pop in a memory card into this guy right here and walk around all day with over 3,000 exposures. It was just such a, because now I am, I already knew pretty much that, our phones were able to take thousands and thousands of pictures, but still going back to where I came from and to say that 20 years ago, that's where we were with technology. And today we're at the point where we're talking about global shutters and cameras that are shooting 30 frames a second with blackout free photography. It really is incredibly remarkable how far we've come in a relatively short amount of time. And right now, that's the story of me basically calling myself Mr. Camera Junkie, because on top of falling back in love with photography, I also fell in love with the technology I'm a techie. I'm a tech guy. I fix computers, iPhones, and all that stuff. And to now know of the internal components of how these cameras work, on top of the ability, the magic that is photography, absolutely hooked. Just absolutely hooked. So it was just I stay in awe with the ability and the possibilities of what we have in our hands. And when I hear people complaining about, oh, this camera doesn't have this, or this camera is a piece of junk because it only has one memory card slot, and I just sit back and I think, I don't remember not one film camera that had 2 rolls of film in it. I just don't. So coming from this, right? From this to this right now, as a camera junkie, I have 0 complaints. And that's where I stand with it. I stay in awe with the ability and the accessibility to the technology and what we have available in photography. What would hold you back just 20 years ago, on the price of film itself and the development and everything like that you were frugal with your images. And just last year, with this technology available in my hand, I was able to take over 50,000 images in a year to really improve my photography. Because there's just something that you will only learn by doing the work. And a lot of people talk about stuff similar to this, and the way that I say it is like, you will never get fit by reading a fitness book. You can read all the fitness books in the world, and that will never make you a fit person. You will always have to put in the work. So there is a level to understanding photography and film that you will need, or maybe to drive the passion. But at the end of the day, if you're really trying to get the best and become the best at your craft, whether it's video or photography, you're gonna have to put in the work. You're gonna have to press record. You're gonna have to press click on the shutter, and you're going to have to learn from every experience of saying, why did these photos come out sharp and those didn't? And it's something that only experience could teach you. So that's why I advocate that if you are looking to get into this space and you're looking to learn, don't go out and buy the latest and greatest camera, because a DSLR that's just a little bit far back, you can get a really good deal on this, and this is going to teach you everything that you need to know before you invest into anything else. And if it were so to be that after you invested a little money on a camera like this, and you put in a little bit of effort, you find out that it's not for you. Like, I don't want to do this. I'd rather not learn photography or anything like that. You've only invested a minimal amount instead of having to have purchased the latest and greatest to then find out that it's something that you're really not into. So that's the advice that I give to everyone here. All right, so we got some more people coming in here. Okay, so we have Slies in the house saying hi to everyone. Says my favorite 85mm length is the Nikkor f1.8 S full frame. The S series are gorgeous. The Sigma 56mm f1.4 APS-C lens, and he's saying hello to everyone. I really like Sigma. To give you an example, I have a video on my channel that somebody left a comment that said like Sigma lenses aren't sharp, and I just had to reply. I'm like, everyone's entitled to your opinion, you know. You're wrong, but you're entitled to your opinion, because what you're looking at right now is a Sigma 16mm f1.4, and for the APS-C lineup they have three lenses, which they call like their holy trinity. Is the 16mm f1.4, the 30mm f1.4, and the 56mm f1.4, giving you, I believe, focal lengths of 24, 48, and 85mm equivalents on a full frame. So if you were to be using those lenses on an APS-C camera, you would get the same images that you would off of a film camera using a 24, 48, and an 85mm lens. So that's just, once again, breaking down the APS-C factors of these cameras. But that's why I absolutely love that Sigma trio, because it's just an amazing set of lenses, and they're very inexpensive. The fact that you can get all three for about $1,000 is really good, because there's a lot of lenses that you can purchase. Just one of them will cost you about $1,000. Professor Nez says, nice angles, looking great. Thank you, sir. Honestly, this second angle over here is inspired by Tom Buck as well. His the 50mm that he's got off to the side. I was using it another 24mm closer to me here, but it wasn't giving that much of a difference between the angle that you're seeing now. And then this gives me an excuse to use my favorite lens, which hands down, I absolutely love the color renditioning that you get off of this lens, and the fact that it's a 1.8, which is better in low light, looks a lot better in my set here, because I don't use that much light so that I can get good saturation. Says great line there. Up the skills before the gear. Absolutely. Says also, it matters your skills no matter how good your camera is. The saying goes, upgrade your skills before you upgrade your gear. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you repeating the mantra here of upgrade your skills before your gear. Hassan Niz, welcome, sir. Thank you for saying hi. I believe this is the first time that I see you here. Welcome. As you probably see, everyone's gonna say hello to you. Welcome to the live stream, and welcome to the Camera Junkie crew. Says, do you use OBS to stream? No, I use Ecamm. Ecamm is my preferred method of live streaming. It gives me the ability to do everything that you're seeing here, like the text on screen. Let's see if we get this one. Okay. I can take the overlays, I can turn them on and off, I can turn on and turn off everything that you see here, and also allows me to bring like the text on screen for your comments. All of this is done on Ecamm. The one caveat for Ecamm is that it is a Mac computer only program, is for Mac OS only, but as someone who used OBS on a very nice computer, I highly recommend going the Ecamm route. Is just, as far as me and this live stream, absolutely love the quality of image, sound, control and the fact that my Apple computers have not rebooted on me. You know, you obviously haven't been here, but just to give you a little update, I've been doing this live stream and I had my OBS computer shut down because of updates in the middle of my live stream, and just leave everyone hanging, and I have to wait for the computer to reboot in the middle of my live stream. Like, it has no idea like that I'm actually using it, and it would just do whatever it wanted. And these are things that I have yet to experience, and downright down to the T of how smooth this system works out for me is what makes it the best for me and for my live stream. So I highly recommend Ecamm if you haven't checked them out. And if you are using PC over OBS, I would tell you to use Streamlabs OBS if your computer can handle it. It does require more hardware, but I highly recommend the experience of Streamlabs OBS is a lot better than what I had when I was using just standard OBS. It says, I never had a camera in my life, and I just recently got myself an A6100 for video and love it. Bro, you got yourself a really good camera. Going from nothing to the A6600. Now, what I will tell you is learn your camera, because that camera can do pretty much everything and anything that you could ever want. So if you ever have an inkling, say like, hey, I think I might want another camera because of this, most likely this A6600 can do it for you. Now, the one thing that it will just not do is be a full frame camera, which we had been mentioning before, compared to the APS-C. But to give you an example, you're seeing an image off of an APS-C camera right now. This is the A6100 with the Sigma 16mm. Absolutely love this combination, and the amount of money that you can save by staying in an APS-C ecosystem when it comes to lenses is dramatic. Because like I said, I can get the 3 lenses from Sigma that gives me all the variations that I could ever want for my Sony cameras for about $1,000 to get that 16, the 30, and the 56. And the lens that you see over here to the right in full frame costs just about that. Costs $900 for that one lens. And we're not even talking about the camera bodies. So, you know, it just depends on what it is that you want to do. But if you're doing like video, I would also recommend to stay on the APS-C side, because there are other advantages to staying APS-C when you're doing video. And talking about that, somebody was talking about like that the APS-C line from Sony really has nowhere to go. I want, I'm gonna put my 2 cents in here. There we go. And my 2 cents is that I think that there's something that Sony has in their back pocket, and when they drop it, it's just gonna drop jaws. They just came out with a new camera, the ZV-E10, or Dr. Elo's in the house. Like Dr. Elo says, the ZV-Elo. The ZV-E10 has the same sensor that this camera has, that the 6600 has. It's the 24 megapixel that's standard off of all of these Sony camera lines. The Sony ZV-1, which is the predecessor to, did I say that correct? Anyways, the one that came before the ZV-E10, it's an all-in-one point-and-shoot camera, and it has a 1-inch sensor. The difference between these sensors, apart from the size itself, is that the ZV-1 has a stacked sensor. So it's basically like 2 sensors recording light on top of each other. So as light is going through one, it's hitting the second, and they're both recording an image, which allows crazy fast frame rates of 240, 480, and even 960 frames a second on the ZV-1. Fingers crossed. What I'm hoping is that the next line of Sony APS-C cameras is that they're gonna bring out a 24 megapixel stacked APS-C sensor. And if you start getting high frame rates like that on the APS-C Sony cameras. It's going to be such a dramatic change and upgrade, because the one thing that even people are complaining about right now with the Sony ZV-E10, which is Sony's latest camera, is that because they're using the old sensor, the sensor readout is still to the slower side. And it being the slower side, when you're using it for video, you get something that's called like the jelloing effect. I'm gonna run blank on the name again. Oh, here we go. Oh man, I'm running a blank right now. It's sensor, has to do with the sensor, and I'm running a blank on the name. Oh my god, there we go. Look at this. I gotta give it to myself. Can't remember. Such a brain fart. Rolling shutter. There we go. I knew it was shutter. It's called rolling shutter. And rolling shutter has to do with when you're whip panning the camera from left to right, that the sensor starts getting information from the top of the sensor, and by the time it reaches the bottom, the image has shifted. So as it's scanning the sensor, it almost makes things look like they're leaning and bending. And that all has to do with the output rate or the refresh rate on the sensor itself. And if you're able to get a stacked sensor, APS-C, onto a camera like this with an upgraded processor, you can see almost what we call a global shutter, where you will not see any of those jelloing effect of rolling shutter, because of the fact that it will be able to read the sensor entirety, like the top of it to the bottom of it, almost at the same exact time, so that there is no jelloing effect and every image is like a complete still and put together in a form of video to allow that. So fingers crossed that Sony comes out with a stacked sensor on their APS-C line, and let's call that the A7000 series. I will absolutely be in love. Says, yeah, sometimes people complain the smallest things about crop sensor, no 4K, etc., while forgetting the content is king. Absolutely, man. And the thing is that, like, even though I use 4K, I only use it sparingly. It's not even for my talking headshots. It's mostly for B-roll when I really want to be able to punch in and get like higher detail. And that's what I use it for, and that's why I wanted 4K. But besides that, I've said this before, nobody wants to be seen in 4K. I was a huge 8mm and Super 8 guy in 1979. So we're saying hi to each other. Learning by doing. Yes. So this is going back to me saying that I took 50,000 shots. I'm still in, I'm proud of myself for that, because when I look at my Lightroom file, and that doesn't even include my iPhone photography, that was just 50,000 shots. And that's just me putting in the work, almost trying to get to my 10,000 hours of photography, so that I can say that I am somewhat of a master, like a master of your craft. And that's only a personal goal, because that's one of the things that I think that I love about photography, that there really is no mastery of the art. Once you know the rules, you know how to break them. And there's really no plateau. There's a lot of things where you can learn, a lot of hobbies where you can get to a certain level and kind of top out. And when it comes to video and photography, I don't see that, because there's so many nuances. Like, you can learn everything about portrait photography, which would be immensely hard. Just say like, I know everything that there is to know about portrait photography, and you'll be like, okay, now do macro. Have at it. And that's just one of the many, many, many categories. Underwater, low light, astrophotography, and there's each category is just as big, or if not bigger, than each other preceding category. That's why I love photography, because there's always something to learn. Everybody's saying hi to themselves. Rich and Elo. He goes, I love the Sigma 16 f1.4. Yep. Yet to get the 56. I only have the 16 millimeter, and I've been super happy with it. I'm a 24 millimeter, type of, that's one of my preferred focal lengths. And this lens has prevented me from buying the G Master 24 1.4, because I get the results that I want from it, and it saved me a lot of money. So for that alone, I absolutely love this lens, like hands down. But besides that, yeah, I think I've been using Sigma since I was shooting in my Canon days, and I've always been happy. That's why when that person left that comment saying like Sigmas aren't sharp, I'm like, that's your opinion. You're wrong, because sharpness will all have to do with skill, and if you're expecting anything to do this for you, you'd be incorrect. But with that being said, I know for a fact, I actually think that the fact that these lenses do not have image stabilization. Okay, somebody bought me coffee. Oh, Randall, thank you, sir. Randall supporting my coffee addiction, just to show you. Today I had to go Dunkin'. Look, I'm not even going to talk about today. So today we went Dunkin'. Because had someone told me my side angle was wrong and unprofessional and no one would use it in real production, that is so awesome, Tom. That is so funny. The Tom angle, man. Absolutely, the 50 millimeter. Well, the funny thing is that, Tom, they're actually wrong, because the fact that you're using it defeats that comment, right? Just like if Tom Buck is using it in his stream, then that's one person who's using it in their production, and me, that makes it two. Says, is it me or is your noise gate expander set a bit too aggressive? It could be, but I've been trying to get somebody to help me with that. Well, he's here actually, like if he's still here, Mr. KP, this guy right here. He was supposed to help me last week set up my microphone, but we got into a completely different conversation and got sidetracked in a very good way. It was an awesome live stream, but I still didn't get to set my my gate too well. The other thing is I also have my air conditioning on as well, and I'm still feel like I'm sweating here. So I gotta get this under control. So I told them that I got the idea from seeing it in multiple feature-length documentaries. That's great. That's so funny, but you do see that a lot, and that's usually the one that you will have like on the slider, the side shot while people are talking, and just allows them to get a second angle on an interview. Absolutely. Check ESPN. Check anything ESPN or NBC. You'll see it. Oh, so you see here comes the welcomes. Says nice. Now I know Tom loves Ecamm as well. Check it out. Absolutely. But Ecamm is just, it is a full production suite. The switching cameras that you're seeing here, this, without me having to touch it, all done through Ecamm. And this is really just scratching the surface, because I just have it set up to, the things for my convenience. Like right now, I'll just throw the overlay on there, and that's just for my aesthetic purposes of the way that I would like it. But you can do so much from remote productions. I think it's I hope I got her last name right. I think it's Nikki Saunders, who actually has a podcast, Nikki and Moose, and she does her entire recording through Ecamm, even though it's a podcast, because of the audio integration that you have, being able to isolate tracks, from yourself to the guest that you bring on. This is a full on production suite. Like, on top of that, you have the ability to do remote production with Ecamm. Like, the possibilities are endless, and it has a one-click feature where I can invite a guest and have them on my live stream, in real time, and have a one-on-one like conversation with one or up to 4 more guests right through Ecamm, using the Ecamm Pro subscription on Ecamm. But it really does give you the ability to do everything that you want. And the biggest feature of Ecamm, the biggest feature that we've been mentioning a lot, but is really no way to put it into words unless you experience it yourself, is the Ecamm community on Facebook. On top of the developers of the program, Ken and Glenn, those guys are just phenomenal, because if there is a problem with the program, they're within, within arm's reach of communicating with them through the Ecamm community to get things resolved. And 9 times out of 10, they're fixing things before you ever experience it. So it's really interesting. And one of the examples that Doc Rocks always gives about Ecamm and what they're doing there is that when the world was shut down last year and nobody could find the things that they needed to do their productions, like when everyone was looking for something like this, like the Elgato video capture cards, something like this, to allow them to use their cameras as webcams, Ecamm saw the need and the fact that the parts or the items that people needed were not available, so they reconfigured and reprogrammed the language of the program itself so that it can accept and recognize a variety of different cameras without having to need a video capture card like this, and you can plug them directly into Ecamm and use them as a webcam. They saw a need, and then they catered, or they built the program to cater to the need of the demands of the people. And that's something that you could only get through Ecamm because of the way that they have built their community. And once again, the best part of Ecamm is the community. You'll find me, Doc Rock, Tom Buck, a bunch of people from this chat right here in the Ecamm community on Facebook, and it's also just so much fun. It's a really cool community. Says Tom Buck, your channel is do whatever you want to do. It's nice to change up the camera view, different perspective. He says exactly. The Sony ZV-1. Yes, the ZV-1 with the stacked sensor. I think that's the next step for Sony APS-C cameras. Think about it. I have thought about it actually, and probably the only reason why Sony hasn't done stacked sensors on their APS-C line is honestly so that they do not cannibalize their full frame line. Like a stacked sensor, right? Just give you a little perspective. A stacked sensor APS-C A6100 would rival an A9 II. Hands down. It would. And the price difference, even at $1,400 on the A6600, you could add another couple hundred, say $1,600 for this stacked sensor APS-C camera. Excuse me, the hypothetical Sony A7000 series, and that will actually take out a lot of cameras. Now, one camera that was just recently discontinued from Sony, which is the A9, which also stacked sensor, full frame, 24 frames a second, silent shooting, blackout shooting. That thing put everybody on its ass when it came out. and now they have version 2, and instead of coming out with version 3, they came out with the Alpha 1, which is just mind melding. So the way that that system has progressed, I can see it cannibalizing an A9 camera, which has now been discontinued. And it seems very funny because it's rumored that the A6000 or A6100, which is what you're seeing right now, has also been discontinued, kind of because of the Sony ZV-E10. You know, if you're in the market for a new camera and you're looking at the A6100 or the Sony ZV-E10, it's going to be a no-brainer to grab the ZV-E10. But now, ZV-E10 and A6400, you already have substantial differences with a magnesium alloy frame, weather sealing, full picture profiles, color profiles, and creative styles. Everything is in the 6400 that is not available in the 6100. So for that reason, Sony, knowing that they were coming out with the ZV-E10, I think they already knew that nobody would buy the 6100 anymore, and that's why we stopped seeing it being shipped from Sony in this hypothetical soft discontinuing of that camera. Now they're saying that that it's still available and that you can find it, but I haven't really seen it in available in stores or places that you would shop online. And what's being pushed is the ZV-E10, which to me makes sense. It says, I like the single angle thing you do, Tombuck. In fact, I was thinking about reintroducing other angles, which I used last time. I wish I had a second Ninja. I'm tardy to the party, but hey, never late, always on time. Well, now to just talk a little bit about what's been going on. Personal wins for myself. This week coming up, I have set a goal for myself to produce a video for my channel that's not live stream, just regular video on demand content. I have a couple of ideas. I kind of know where I'm gonna lean, so I have that. But the reason why I didn't make a video this week is because I actually made 4 videos, and that's why I'm kind of calling it a win. I made 2 short clips and 2 full-length videos. We'll be seeing them eventually with Doc Rock. I did them for him, but what it's allowed me to learn in just a short amount of time is how to create content for someone else, not myself. And to get Doc Rock's approval on a video or multiple videos at this moment, it really has shown me a lot of what I'm capable of and how fast I've been able to turn them around. That with my new gadget that I spoke about last week, the Stream Deck, this thing really has improved my workflow to the fact that I've been able to produce that, because I also have another client video that I'm working on. So hypothetically, I did 4.5 videos, and I'll be finishing up that last edit this coming week. With that being said, I'm putting an onus on myself to get this next video out. I have the idea for it, but that's it, and that's why I'm mentioning it right now. So if I'm able to meet my goal, I will have the video shot, edited, and uploaded by Friday. So before next week's live stream, I will have this video done, completed, edited, and uploaded to my channel. And that's the challenge that I'm putting on for myself now. My live streams here, this is a given. I'm always gonna be here hanging out, having fun, answering questions, talking cameras, talking rumors. Yeah, rumors is supposedly the A74 is delayed as well, and I'm not even gonna get into that, but that all has to do with the status of the world, not so much an individual company. But with that being said, my next week's goal is to have another piece of content onto the channel in addition to next week's live stream. And the way things are going, I don't see why I won't be able to complete that goal. You know, it is a bit of a challenge. This week was crazy hectic with all of those videos. School started again, so dealing with getting Aiden back to school and moving things along in that aspect, but it's just so many hoops that you have to jump through that makes things difficult, but they don't make them impossible. So that's why I said, even though no matter, you know, the world could be falling, by next week Friday I should have another video up on my channel so that I could keep this going, because I have way too much fun. And right now, doing video edits that are not for myself has taught me a lot about editing for myself. So like I just mentioned, even though it's just a couple of weeks, I'm putting the challenge on myself because I believe that I'm able to use the skills that I just acquired to really pump out the content. And if I can start doing that, then I can really I'll be able to set myself up for the rest of this year to meet the goals that I had set up of 104 pieces of content on the channel from January 1st. So that's roughly 2 pieces of content a week, right? 52 weeks, 104. Yep. And that's the goal. So, all right, let me see. Okay, so Randall says the A6100 is still available at my local Best Buy store. Okay, that's cool. That's good to know. So maybe it's mostly just down here in South Florida that we got more people picking up these devices that you don't see them. Like even right now, I drive by car dealerships. It looks bad. Like I drove by the car dealership over here and I thought they were closed. They had like no cars on the lot. They had like one car for each type that they have available to sell. Like no variations in color. Like one of this model is like going to a Toyota dealership and seeing one Corolla, one Camry, and one Tacoma, and a Prius. Just like, yeah, in the whole lot. It's pretty interesting, but it is what it is. I don't know if you guys have any other questions, but if you don't, then I might be calling it early today. Let me know if you guys have, like, you know, hopefully I was able to convey this brief history of photography within the last 25 years. Yeah, I still stay amazed, you know, kind of like my closing thought. I still stay amazed that we have the ability to carry around in our pockets devices that can take thousands and thousands of exposures and images in such small packages. It really does blow me away, and that's why whenever I hear anyone pretty much complaining about technology and the way that it's at right now, I just say, really, you know, count your blessings. The fact that we have these devices and we have the ability to do what it is that we're doing, that's amazing by itself. And if you don't think so, then you're probably someone who isn't going to be doing anything with the latest and greatest technology either. So, and with that, I'm going to give you guys some time to see if you have any other questions. But it has been a crazy hectic week. I could use the extra sleep because I've missed a lot of it this week. You know, starting school with Aiden and literally all the hoops that they had you jump through is insane. But yeah, I don't see any other questions from you guys in chat, so I'm gonna call it. As always, thank you for hanging out. Thank you for spending your time here with me, your most precious commodity. It's what we can never get back, you know. Our time, it's fleeting, so make the most of it. Make the most of your everyday don't take time for granted, and have a great week. I wish every single one here the best week. Just know that I'll be doing it all over again next week, Saturday, 10:55 p.m. Eastern Time, right here, the same channel, same place. You will find me and the rest of the crew members of the Camera Junkie Crew. What we can talk about next week, honestly, I could leave it up to you guys. If you have anything that you have a question about, something that's pending, you could always shoot me a direct message. You can find me at MrCameraJunkie on pretty much every platform. Okay, so... Oh, thank you, Rich. I appreciate it. So Rich bought me some coffee as well. Thank you very much. It's highly, highly appreciated. My caffeine addiction is something serious. And it's prevalent. I feel like I might have a cup of coffee right now just because of how I'm feeling. But I definitely don't want to, because then I'll definitely be up all night. Excuse me. As you can see, it's getting to me. But like as always, thank you for hanging out. You guys are absolutely awesome. I always appreciate the love and support that I get from all of you. I had some people in here for the first time, like Mark. Thank you for stopping by. Always fun talking with you, sir. And Hassan. Yes, Hassan, I appreciate you stopping by and introducing yourself into the chat. It's always nice to see the people who I get to communicate with, and people who are actually watching my content. Because if you don't leave a message or let me know, I really have no idea. Right now, the YouTube really doesn't let me know who watches my videos, so it's always highly appreciated when you leave a comment. So there he is. Yep. So Rich says, saw the stream. Thanks for all that you do. Margo saying thanks a lot as well. Randall saying goodbye. Everybody started to say goodbye. Hassan saying thanks, man. I just recently stumbled upon your channel. Keep producing great content. Thank you, man. And like I said, I'm here every Saturday. So if you have the time, always know that you'll find me here talking cameras, talking, current camera events, photography, lighting, anything, And for those of you who are still here, if you haven't done so, make sure to hit the like button. That also goes a long way. If you've made it this far on the replay, like I said, if you have a question, make sure that you leave it in the comments below. I answer all of my comments and all of the questions. And if I don't answer it directly, you might find me answering it here as one of the subjects for one of my next live streams, because we always try to keep it as interesting, and I always try to provide as much value as I possibly can to you, the Camera Junkie crew. So thank you once again. All right, Hassan, I appreciate for the coffee as well. That's super awesome. That means the world to me. So I really, really do appreciate it, especially to have you here for the first time and, helping me out and helping the channel. I can't tell you how that means the world to me. So thank you. And thank every single one of you. As always, take care of yourselves. Have a great, great week. And I will see everyone next time. 10:55 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's it. Everyone, have a great night. See you next week.